Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is the place where we like to gather as writers and talk about all things writing for writers. And so we're glad that you're with us today, either live here or in the replay. We have a lot of you do watch the replay, so we're always want to be sure we welcome you to our discussion this morning. And my name's Jean Wise. I'm one of your co-hosts here. I'm a Christian nonfiction writer. And I enjoy this, that when we meet each week here on Tuesday mornings, it just kind of inspires you and gives you a shot in the arm, and you can go back then to the writing grind and get through it with some inspiration and stuff. I want to introduce my co-host, Johnny Alexander, who'll say a little bit about herself and introduce our topic and our guests today. Johnny.
Hey everyone, so glad to have you with us today. Again, whether you're with us in the chat or whether you are on the replay. Really excited to have our guest back again. Last week we talked about why writers need websites, and this week we're sort of following that up with website wizardry and WordPress. Love that alliteration. So we have back with us Rhonda Dragomir and Josh Masters. We're very happy to have both of them. They will say they're not experts on these things, but they know more than a lot of us do. And we've decided that that's what an expert is, right? Is someone who knows more than you do or I do about something. So we're really glad to have them coming to talk to us more about websites and how we can improve our websites and work with WordPress. So Rhonda, Joshua, thank you so much. And turning it over to you guys.
Yeah, we're so glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So last week, Rhonda sort of was our referee, and I guess this week I'll be the referee. But Rhonda, make sure you jump in whenever you have thoughts, and we've been sending notes back and forth. So there's a lot involved with building a website, and so we've got a really long outline here. So we're going to try to briefly touch on the things that you should think about when you're either building a website for the first time, or if you're going to redesign your website, and sort of go through 4 main topics with some subpoints. And we can only sort of go into them a little bit at a time. And if you have questions, we can go into those during the question time. And then at the end, after we go through those 4 things, we'll look a little bit at WordPress, which is what both I and Rhonda use. We both use it a little bit differently, but we're both using WordPress.org. So there's a lot to get through. So, hold on to your servers. Here we go.
I love that. Hold on to your server. I am going to ask real quick before you get too much into it, and maybe you plan to do this. I always get so confused between the WordPress.com and the WordPress.org, because to me it's like they are backwards of what it should be. So for people who are really new to this, can you just give a really brief distinction between the two?
Yes, we are going to get to that. So that's
okay, good, great.
A little bit further in the outline.
Okay.
But we would definitely talk about
Good deal.
that. And both Rhonda and I have used both and had to switch from one to the other. So,
oh, wow.
So here's the 4 things to think about when you are designing your website for being an author, or if you're redesigning your website. The first thing is this: make a plan. Make a plan. That sounds simple. It sounds obvious, but most people don't do it. They just jump into Wix or WordPress and start building stuff. So make a plan. So, and a few things underneath that plan is this, and this is important to me. Above the craft of writing and above the technical aspects of building your business, most of us are Christian authors.
Mm-hmm.
And Scripture tells us that we are designed to bring glory to God. Now, most of the time, I hear a lot of Christian authors who say, God gave me this dream, and so then they go and pursue the dream. And sometimes we sort of leave God behind as we move forward with our dream. So even in your website, God should be part of everything that you're doing. Every decision that you make should be, how am I glorifying God? So the first step should be to pray and ask these 2 questions. What is the purpose of my site? And 2, how do I best represent Christ and my goals as an author? And when I say represent Christ, that doesn't mean you have to have glowing crosses on your website, but it does mean that Christ is reflected through who you are, and that's evident in your website design. So make that part of your planning and your whole strategy as an author. So first, pray. Second, and this is all part of part one, making your plan.
Make a plan, yeah.
Right, make the plan. Look at other websites. It is okay to, we don't want to use the word steal because we're Christians, but it is okay to get design elements that you like. You never want to copy someone's website, but there are many, many author websites. So look at other people's websites and see what elements attract you, and that will probably also attract your readers. So get ideas by looking at other websites. And then make a list, a physical list. Part C is make a physical list of the elements that you want to include on your website based on the answers above, which were, what is the purpose of my site? How do I best represent Christ and my goals as an author? And you make a physical list of the elements that you want to include on your website. And then finally, map out the navigation with the reader in mind. You want to do that before you start building your website. So many times we build the website the way we think it's clever or the way we want it to be, but your website, you're fourth in the category of who the website is for. First, your website is for God. Then it is for your reader.
Yeah.
Then it is for possible agents or publishers to know who you are. Then it's what you want. You're not at the top of the food chain, right? So make sure you're developing a navigation system before you start building your website. How are people going to navigate, and how is it useful for those audiences? So those are the four things that I would say are part of making your plan. Did you have any additional thoughts, Rhonda, about that?
I was just going to type into the chat. If I had done that before I started my website, oh, could I have saved time? So, especially planning your site map. And if for folks who don't know what a site map is, that's what tabs are across the navigation on the front, what items are in the drop-down menu, and how do they relate to each other. And it's so funny because I'm a planner in everything I do, but for my website, I just got on and started smacking stuff around, and it really did not work.
Yeah.
And this might be a techie question, but as you do this planning, doesn't that also then determine what's the word I want? The design, not the design, the platform, the format, the theme. The theme, that's the word I want. The theme, because not everybody has menu it across the top, or not everybody has drop down. Am I right on that?
Yes, you're absolutely
okay.
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like one element of Rhonda's site, let me just show you real quick. So this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If I pull this up.
Oh, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's there.
Can you see this?
We see you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So let me go to Rhonda's site real quick. So
I like your header.
One thing that's great about Rhonda's site is, see, her blog is called Find the Pony, right? And that has a special meaning to her that she explains in the website. But if this was all there was, people wouldn't necessarily know what Find the Pony was. But because she was thinking about the reader, when you scroll down, oh, here's blog, right? So it's easy for the reader to find. It still reflects her character, but it's easy for the reader to find what they're looking for. And two of the things you always want to make sure are easy to find is your blog, if you have one, and your subscription, if you have a subscription thing on your site. You know what I mean? You want to, so many times I go to authors' websites and I want to support them, and I can't figure out where their mailing list is.
Wow.
You always want that to be prominent. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, your navigation does affect the theme, and it also affects like what you need in your host. Because if you're going to have a store where you're selling your books, you need a host that can support that. So that's another reason to sort of plan out what you want to have on your site before you start building it. And now that doesn't mean you can't come up with new things as you're going, but you want to have a plan. You know, Jesus says, count the cost, you know, before you build a building. So know what you're trying to build before you start building it. It's easy sometimes with things like Wix to just start dragging things into place and going, oh, that's cool. But then there's no strategy to your website. So even if you already have a website, that's something you can go back and look at. Is the navigation make sense for the reader? Does it make sense for who's coming to the site? Is the structure of the website consistent and easy to follow? Is the information that someone needs easy to find? So you can sort of self-evaluate that, or even have someone go to your website and say, hey, tell me what you find confusing, and then don't take it personally when they actually give you feedback about it. So that was number one. Before you begin or redesign your website, make a plan. That was number one. Number two, and this is the question that you were asking earlier, is what is the type of site? Now, the word I should probably use is platform, but I don't want to confuse people with your author platform. Right, which is, having your mailing list and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and whatever else you're doing. So when I say platform, don't think of that. It's what are you building your website upon? And you have no way to answer that question if you didn't do the plan in part one. If you didn't do part one and make a plan, you have no idea what your needs are for the platform where you're going to build your website. So once you've made that plan, part two is what type of site are you going to have, or what platform are you going to build it on? Now, the common ones that are used are WordPress.com, WordPress.org, and then you have instant sites like Wix or Weebly or Square. What's that called? Squarespace. Which is another sort of plug and play, what you see is what you get, like Wix. Or you can build a site from scratch. Now, a lot of people can't code, but you may hire someone to write the code for you. So are you going to use WordPress in one of its two formats, which both Rhonda and I do? Are you going to use sort of an instant site like Wix or Square or Weebly, an outside program like Muse, which is now defunct, but something like that? Or are you going to build a page from scratch or have someone else build it for you? Now, Rhonda, I know that you had a particular experience with WordPress.com and WordPress.org, so I'll have you talk about that in a minute, but the brief description of the difference is WordPress.com is hosted on the WordPress servers. So they become your host and the designing component. And you own your material, but it's all on their servers. WordPress.org is the same content software for building, but you download the software, you install it to your own servers, and then you have complete control. And it's much more flexible because you have access to the back-end folders. You can physically move in files. You can add more types of plugins. So you have a lot more control with WordPress.org, but there's more back-end work because you're installing it on your own servers, and you may need help doing that, but it gives you more control. So Rhonda, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience between the two?
What's interesting, sometimes I think my theme is embarrass Rhonda. That's just the thing that I do the best. So I will share with you. I'm supposed to be this great website guru, but I was very foolish. And in March this year, I decided I wanted to put up my personal website. My business website is on Network Solutions. They're a very solid, stable host, but I hate their website builder. That's why I learned Adobe Muse. But so I'm looking for a new host. I heard WordPress, I kept hearing WordPress. One of the reasons to use WordPress software is it is open source software, meaning it is free. Lots of contributors. It's going to be there for a long time. I ended up using Adobe Muse. I'll just call myself an expert with Adobe Muse. And now they're not going to support it anymore. So I was just kind of dumped in the drink again. Now what? So I thought the next system I learned, I wanted to be something that's going to be around for a long time. You got to think about this. Wix is going great, but what if Wix goes belly up? What are you going to do? What new program are you going to learn? And you don't want to have to go back to the drawing board, which is what I did. Well, I got on WordPress.com. I registered my domain. I got all going. And when I started going, I wanted that building block ability like I had in Muse. And so I found a plugin, and I'll tell you, I use the Elementor plugin. I'm learning to appreciate it. But when I went to install my plugin, guess what? On WordPress.com, I couldn't use plugins unless I paid even more money. And by the time I started adding up, this is why, Josh, your advice to have a plan is so good. When I started adding up what I wanted to do, I would have had to go into their premium thing, and I just can't do that. So when I started looking around different places, what I found is there are several web hosts that will let you just download the free WordPress material, the program, onto your website, and then it opens up all these. One of the things about WordPress they talk about is plugins. In other words, pre-written programs with function that is useful to you and you want. So, and I'm sure, Josh, you're going to talk about some plugins. So I ended up out on the internet, and I'll talk later. I'll throw this back to you, Josh. But what I would say is WordPress.com, yes, but they're a business. They will bring you in, and they, as far as I'm concerned, they smacked me around a little bit before I could get what I want. They wanted to squeeze every dollar out of me. So I didn't do my research ahead of time. Once I did do some research, I ended up, my author site now is on HostGator. And there's a reason for that I'll tell you later. Another good one is Bluehost. And I was just on both of those sites this morning checking prices. So Josh, when you think that's appropriate, when we're talking about a web host and choosing a web host, I'll have more to contribute.
Yeah, okay, so that's number 3, right? So we'll get to that
Great.
shortly, yeah. So there's nothing wrong with WordPress.com. It's just a question of what are you trying to do with your site. So if you want to make a lot of changes and have plugins and customize things, you really want to go with WordPress.org because it gives you a lot more options and it's cheaper than WordPress.com. But remember, when you buy a domain name and whatever content you put into a website, it belongs to you. So Rhonda talked about she had registered her domain name with WordPress.com and then had to move it to WordPress.org. You still own your domain, so nothing is undoable. It's just a question of how much pain and suffering it's going to cause you.
I will say this, because in fairness, I have to say, when I figured out what happened, I called WordPress.com as a very irate person. I was nicely irate, and they did let me out of my web hosting that I bought. But they would not let me out of purchasing the domains. So I have the domains, continue to register with them. Most web hosts will give you a free domain registration. Mm-hmm. So in order to keep my domains, I had to pony up for that money. But they were nice enough to let me out of my hosting.
Mm-hmm. And you do own the domain, and we're going to talk more about domain names in a little bit, but you own your domain name. But sometimes there is a fee to move it if it's within a certain amount of time. You know what I mean? Some servers will say, well, it's got to be with us this amount of time, and if you want to move it sooner, then you have to pay a fee. But it does belong to you, so you can move it. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit later. So that's the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. Now, when you talk about sites like Wix, Wix is probably the easiest way to get up a modern looking website quickly because it's got lots of built-in effects. It's all in one package, but there are some major drawbacks to Wix. And I've built sites for other people for Wix. I built one for our HOA and I built one for another author. It's very easy to use. So if you are not technologically advanced and you want a modern looking site, Wix might be the answer. But the problem is that the blog functions in Wix are very limited. And they may have fixed this, but if they did, it's very recently. But last time I checked, you couldn't even link to a particular post because it was all done in the background. So it was very limited in its blogging ability. And also, like Rhonda said, everything is on Wix and belongs to Wix, not the content, but the actual structure and the files. So if Wix goes belly up, you're out of luck and you've got to go back to the drawing board. Also, and again, they're working on this, Wix is working on this, but their SEO, which is their search engine optimization, is not as good as a website that's been built or a WordPress site on either WordPress, meaning your ranking in Google isn't as high because it can't find all the words. It uses algorithms to build your blog. So as you add content, it's not included into Google the same way it is on other sites. So it looks good. It's quick to put together. It's not a bad website. If someone comes and looks at your website, it's a good looking website. But there's lots of back-end things that are very, very limited and will not boost you when people are searching for your material. So you have to weigh that, right? And then, of course, you can build your site from scratch. Rhonda and I both used Muse. I've also used, I can't remember the other one I used. But there are all kinds of web building programs that you can use. Now, if you're going to do it yourself, one downfall to that is, of course, you have complete control. But a downside to it is you have to use that program to update your website. So you have to open the program, you have to make changes, and then you have to upload the changes through what they call an FTP server. Whereas with Wix or WordPress.org or WordPress.com, you can log on anywhere. If you have access to the internet, you can just open your site and start making changes if you've got the password. So you can change things wherever you are all the time. So there's ups and downs to everything. So it's a matter of what you want. And then, of course, you could always pay someone to build your website. But if you're going to do that, here's something you have to ask. See, everybody's goal is always get the website up. But if you're going to pay someone to build your website, how is it going to be updated? Are you going to have to keep paying them to update it? Do you have access to the files to update it? And if you do you know how to update it? You know, you got to think the long term if you're going to have somebody building your website for you. So those are sort of the categories of the type of site. There's WordPress.com, WordPress.org, Wix, Squarespace. There's also Weebly, but I don't know much about that. Or you can build it from scratch. Now also be careful. If you're going to have someone build your website for you, are they going to do something that you could do yourself? There are many people who build websites that just use WordPress, but it still may be worth it to you, right? If you don't know how or you don't want the trouble, then let them do it and pay for them to do it. But they may be doing some things that you can do on your own. So it's all about research and deciding what you want to accomplish.
The only thing going on in the chat is one question that's going to come up for the hosting, Rhonda, and Brandy brought up there's another, must be a platform, Joomla, Joomia, but she didn't know much about it. I didn't know if either of you two had heard much about that one.
Joomla.
Joomla?
It's with an L, Joomla, I think.
Oh,
Brandy.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
Yes, she corrected it.
In category as Wix. It's one of those independent, when he said, Josh talks about what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG editor. In other words, when I design my site, what I see on the screen is what my visitors will see. That's really important because if it's too complicated while you're designing it, you have no idea what it'll look like, or it resizes pictures, or it bumps text in weird places. So I've never used Joomla, but I think it would have the same limitations, in my opinion, as Wix.
Yes. And that's about all I know about Joomla myself. I haven't really investigated it, but I know it exists. So the second point under what is your back-end platform or what is your type of site is a question that came up last week. And I think it was Tina who asked it, which was, what if you have multiple sites? Should you have multiple sites or should you merge them all into one site? And again, that comes down to part one, like what is your plan? What are you trying to accomplish? So does it make sense for you to have multiple websites for multiple projects or multiple jobs? Or does it make sense for you to build it all together? And that's a question you ask yourself in the planning stage, whether you are beginning a new website or you are redesigning your website. So here's one thing to keep in mind, is if you are doing separate things, it may be okay to have separate websites. So if you are an author and you also do freelance editing, you could decide to have those on the same website, but you may want to keep them separate. So that may make sense to have separate websites. Now, what some authors do, and where I made a mistake, I think, what I will call a mistake early on, is I decided I wanted to have a website and a Facebook page and a different presence for every project I worked on. And what I quickly realized is that is not sustainable. right? So when I wrote my book, American Psalms, and it had its own website and it had its own Facebook page, I realized as I start working on other projects, how much time am I going to devote to the website for the book that came out 6 years ago? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So is it better to have little branches that are all part of your one big brand, which is what I think Tina was talking about last week. And Tina, you can put in the comments if I'm wrong about that. So let me give you an example. Let me share my screen again.
Tina's saying, yes, you are describing exactly what she was talking about with the branch idea. I think that's great. Great image.
So this is my main website. And I used to have this website and then my blog, and it looked like they were connected, but they were really separate. I had my main website with Muse, I had my blog on WordPress, and then I had a separate WordPress.com site for American Psalms, which is my book. So this is, you can no longer see this site, this is hidden, but this is my old American Psalms site. And I never updated it because I was always working on the next project or my other website. So this sort of sat static and nothing ever really happened with it. And I also had a Facebook page that was American Psalms that wasn't being updated. So I ended up switching my American Psalms Facebook page to the official Joshua J. Masters author page so that it worked for whatever I was working on. So what I ended up doing was I took my old site that was on Muse, merged it together with my blog on WordPress.org, and then took the content from American Psalms and moved that in. So I had this, you can see this is the URL that is the default URL because I took the domain name that I owned for WordPress.com and moved it to WordPress.org. So now here's my site, Joshua J. Masters. So what happens to the domain American Psalms? So I moved that over here, and now when I click on American Psalms, this is part of my website that is now joshuajmasters.com/American Psalms. So I took the content from the separate website and made it a page on my regular website. And then I took the American Psalms domain and redirected it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So basically, if someone is reading my book, American Psalms, and it says, visit us at americanpsalms.com, and they type that in, it's going to redirect them to joshuajmasters.com, American Psalms. And then when I have another book, I'll add another book and another book and another book. So the trick is, though, there's not an easy way, unfortunately, Tina, for you to, here, let me unshare this. There's not an easy way for you to just magically hit a button and have all your websites merged together. Really what you have to do is you have to decide which platform you're going to be on, and then page by page build and steal the content from the old website and then take down the old website. So that's a question of, do you have time to do that, or do you need to hire someone to do it? Because there's not really a way to just pull them together. So when I started my Joshua J. Masters page, I started with the blog, and then each page I had on my regular website, I just went page by page. Now I'll build a page in WordPress, and then I'll steal the content from the other website. And then I'll move on to the next page. And then when all the pages were built, page by page, I killed the old website and activated the pages that were in WordPress. So you have to decide, do they match and go together on one site, or are they truly separate things? You know, like if you're an accountant and an author, like those don't need to be the same website. That will make you maybe look more unprofessional as an author. So those probably are separate websites. But if they are projects within your brand, you probably want to merge them all together.
And each book would be like their own page or something. Is that what you're saying?
Their own page underneath the main website.
Correct.
Like, but I would still register a domain for that project and have it point to that specific page.
Wow.
Right? So if I have a book called, you know, Why I Think Gene Wise is Awesome, then I'm going to register genewiseisawesome.com, and it's still going to be under joshuajmasters.com, but I'm going to have a URL, a a domain name that points to that specific page so that if someone's looking for that project, and I can put it inside the project once it's published. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. I actually did hire someone. There's some questions on costs, and I can't remember what I paid. Rhonda's got about design services start maybe about $45 an hour and go up from there. But I actually hired someone to transfer my site from .com to .org, because I had like probably at that point 4 years of blog posts, and I did not want to lose that. And it was just and I don't remember what I paid several $100s number of years ago, and it was probably a little more than that, and everything transferred over. I mean, it was pretty slick once it got done on that. So
so let's recap. So step 1 was make a plan, and underneath that we talked about praying, making sure that we're focused on what God wants in our business, looking at other websites to figure out what elements will work well, making a list of the elements that you want on your website based on the questions that you asked, and then mapping out the navigation with your reader in mind. And here's a little disclaimer on that. It's okay to start simple. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles. It's better to have a simple website done well than a big website that's a mess, right? It's okay to have a simple website and then build on it, because your website should be a live thing, a living thing that is constantly changing. So don't feel like you have to have like the most amazing website with all the bells and whistles on day 1. Start with something simple, do it well, and build from there. Then once you had a plan, number 2 was, what is the back-end platform? Is it going to be WordPress, WordPress.org, Squarespace, Wix, build from scratch? Are you going to have multiple sites or one site? And then that brings us to number 3. Selecting your website host. This is vitally important. Where is the website going to live? So if you're going to use Wix or WordPress.com, then you don't really have a choice. They're going to host your website. Any of those auto builds or WordPress.com, they host your website, and that's where it's going to be. But if you're going to upload your program, your website, or you're going to use WordPress.org and install WordPress.org on servers, you need to decide where it's going to be hosted. So there's a million places to host your website. So I'm not going to recommend one over the other. I'm just going to give you some questions to ask as you're choosing. Okay. What do you use, Rhonda, did you say?
I use HostGator.
Oh, okay. HostGator. And then I know there's GoDaddy, although they've had some security issues lately. But that can happen with any company, really. And then I use Fat Cow, or what we called last week, the Weight Challenge Bovine. But here are some questions for you to ask as you're choosing a host. And again, you're always looking back to that plan. Remember step 1, what is in the plan that's required? And that helps inform the questions that we're asking. So number 1 is, what is the price versus the customer service? You can find very cheap hosting, but that they don't offer any help, right? So what's the balance? What kind of support do they offer? One of the things I like about Fat Cow, and again, I'm not trying to sell Fat Cow, but they have 24-hour live chat for technical support. And I do lots of my website work in the middle of the night. So when something stops working, I can get on and I can talk to someone and say, why is this broken? And very often they can fix it right away. So mine is not the cheapest, but I like the idea that I can communicate with a technical person any time of the day or night if something gets broken, because I like to experiment with things and I will sometimes break things and then I won't be able to fix it. So you have to weigh the cost versus the customer service. Question number 2, do they support or have extensions for WordPress.org? It's an awful thing if you want to use WordPress.org and then buy a hosting service and then find out they don't support WordPress extensions. So whatever platform you're going to use, do they support it? The next question is, what is the storage and bandwidth limits? Again, sometimes the cheap ones will say, hey, we're really cheap, but you can only upload this amount of material a month, and then we're going to cut you off. Or if you expand a bandwidth, if a whole bunch of people come to your website, they start slowing down your website because they only give you so much bandwidth each month. So again, with mine, it's unlimited. So I don't have to worry about how much I'm uploading. So that's another question to ask. Now, here's one that is confusing to people. The SSL, or the security certificate.
Yes.
That was going to be one of my key questions today. So I'm anxious to hear that. And then when you get done to that, there's a couple questions in the chat we want to address.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so go ahead.
And feel free to jump in anytime, Rhonda, of course. So let me explain what a security certificate is, because I think it's this big mystery that nobody understands. Because when you look up technical information, it's written by technical people, and they don't want to make it, or it's not that they don't want to make it understandable, it's that they don't know how to make it understandable, because they have like an engineer's mind. So at its root form, what a certificate does, a security certificate does, is it encrypts all the information that is going into a website or out of a website with a browser, right? So when you go to a website, you type into Google or into Bing or whatever you use, and you go to RhondaDragomir.com, the browser is talking to her servers, wherever they are, and information gets sent back and forth. So what a security certificate does is it validates who Rhonda is, right, that she's not a fake Rhonda, and then encrypts any information that's going back and forth. So if you are selling something on your site, you have to have SSL. Like, no credit card company is going to let you sell anything if you don't have a security certificate. But even if you're not selling something, the information that it crosses between the web browser and the servers should be encrypted so that no one can steal your information. So when someone puts in their email address to join your mailing list, you want to make sure that information is encrypted, at least between the web browser and your website. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are different levels of a security certificate. Some validate the domain, some the domain and the phone number, some even validate the address of where the business is. Now, that's too complicated to get into, but basically what you want to know is that a security certificate makes it safe for information to travel between your servers and the web browser for your readers and for you. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. And are the free ones, some of them, like I have HostGator too, like Rhonda,
Yeah.
and they offer a free SSL certificate. Is that the route to go, or should you pay for these higher level ones? I don't take credit cards, I just collect the email addresses. So I know I have to have it, and it's bugging me now that Google lists me as unsecure, not secure site. It's bugging me. So I know I got to do this now. But so go with a free one or pay for a higher package? What's your guys' feeling about that?
Well, it depends on, again, what you're doing on your site and what you're trying to accomplish and what your host will provide, because HostGator's free SSL may be different than Fat Cow's free
That's
SSL.
right.
So you've got to know what they're doing. I just use the free one, but sometimes even if a host offers it, it has to be activated.
Right.
So you know it's activated if you know in the URL where it says http://, if it says HTTPS and the S means secure, that means that the SSL is activated. So sometimes your host will offer it for free, but it's not activated. So you need to check on that.
Okay.
For most sites, the free one will work, but you want to ask your host when you're choosing a host what they offer for free and what they offer for paid.
Okay.
I will say, as I was shopping, just doing some shopping today, Jean, both HostGator and Bluehost was the other one I looked at, and they're a good, reliable host. They were offering free SSL certificates, and most places now will do that. But there are also, if you click through, you see a little I for information. It will tell you exactly what you're buying. And, you know, if you're doing commerce on your site, I would not do the free certificate. I plan to put this free certificate on mine because right now, if you Google my name and try to find that website that Josh was saying, you get Google gives it a yellow warning dot saying this site is not secure. Well, for me, I just want it to say it's secure. So I think the free one will do that when it's activated, as Josh said. So that's one of the things on my to-do list that I am going to do. And these days, if your site is not secure, people get scared. They won't go to your site if they see that warning, or some web browsers and security programs will come up and say this site isn't secure. They're going to run away because everybody's scared of hackers.
And
so
you also rank lower on the Google page. That's
what
I'm concerned about. Yep.
They won't even search you sometimes. And if you have a common name, you're going to get buried. Right. So in order to come up high on the search engines, you have to have a secure site.
Yeah.
Before we leave your number 3, Josh, there's Brandy asked a question a while back, and I'm afraid to lose it in the chat if I don't bring it to your attention. That she asked if you were familiar with using WordPress's multi-site. I have no idea what that means. Does that mean anything? Or if not, we could ask Brandy to explain a little bit more.
We can get Brandy on in a little bit and have her talk about
on that.
I have a real simple question, and it's probably kind of silly, but we've had a site a long time, and I've always used HTTP : / and you've got that out there and linked it and all that kind of thing. When the S is added, does that affect really the other?
The URL?
The URL. Does that even make sense? Like if someone just has my link as HTTP and not HTTPS, is it still just going to pop up?
No, it will usually redirect regardless of how they
redirect. Okay.
If they type HTTP, it will redirect to the S. And most people don't type HTTP anything; they just put in www.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
So, yeah, that won't affect your links.
You have to provide that. Like if you're doing blog tours and stuff, you often have to provide your links, and you do have to make sure you give them the whole link so that whatever they're linking, it'll go. So I was just wanting to make sure that was still okay.
Usually if someone just types in HTTP, and again, it might depend on your host, but usually if you type in HTTP, it's going to go ask the site to identify itself, and when it sees a certificate, it's going to switch it to the HTTP.
It's just automatic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
And I'm not super familiar with the WordPress multi-site. I know that you can build multiple sites with WordPress, and I presume that it's just the same and you just switch which site you're working on, but I've not actually done it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. We'll let you keep going, or we'll get behind.
Yeah.
So the next question that you want to ask of your host after the SSL is, what are the mail options? Once you've transferred your domain to them, how many emails are you allowed to have? Do they have webmail? Is it a good webmail? Do they have mail forwarding? So I have multiple emails that I use for multiple things, but they all funnel into my mail. Like I don't have to check multiple mail accounts, but I can filter by which email I've had people send things to. So how many email accounts will they give you? Do they have a good webmail system? Like what is their mail function? And then finally, what is their search engine optimization? Now, a lot of that you can do on your own, of course, but do they offer any website engine optimization? And those are the questions that I would ask when you're looking at a host. Price versus customer service. Do they have extensions for WordPress.org if you're going to use it? What is the storage and bandwidth limit? What is the security certificate situation? What are the mail options? And what's the search engine optimization? Did I miss anything there, Rhonda?
That's perfect. I really, it's a simple explanation for something that's really pretty complicated.
Thanks. So make a plan, back-end platform, selecting your website host, and then number 4 of our 4 is selecting your domain name, Now, Rhonda, I know you had some thoughts about that, right?
I do. I said last week my name is really unusual, but you don't want some, I've named my blog Find the Pony. It's based, and so I did register the domain Find the Pony. I went out to get findthepony.com. Somebody already had it. And you need to know when you register a domain, someone may have already had that idea before you. So I went out though and I registered findthepony.blog. And there've been some questions in the chat. Okay, if that's my domain and I register it with X company, whatever company that is, I point that domain toward my blog page on my website, okay? So I can own bunches of domains. So if somebody types in findthepony.blog, not today, but sometime soon, it will go directly to my blog page on my website, you see? So a domain is just simply, that's what the person types in when they're looking for you, okay? So that domain needs to be branded. So I'm wanting to brand Find the Pony, and that's featured there. Josh already showed you. Thank you, Josh, for showing my website.
You're welcome.
That is what I want people to start thinking of me, and I have particular reasons that I've thought through. Whether they're wise or not, we'll find out. But that is what I want to start pointing people towards, my website and my brand. So you need to think about your brand. If you have a common name, if your name was John Jones and johnjones.com is already, and you want the .com domain because that's the main one that people look for. If johnjones.com is registered, you might want to be johnjonesauthor.com, johnjoneswriter.com. I did a website for a lady who had a very common name, and she just put author at the end of her domain and she got it. But you have to hunt for it. It's like fishing. You may reel it in, it may get away from you. But I would go with your author name for sure, rather than a theme or something. You know, findthepony.blog is a subdomain, and we haven't really talked about domains and subdomain. For me, that's a subdomain that I want to start using and owning and managing. But my main domain, and this is another reason I started my author website, is separate from my business website, which is dragomirgroup.com. I found out I really wanted a domain just for my writing. Mm-hmm. That website is just for my writing, and I can link to my other websites from there with hyperlinks. Mm-hmm. But I wanted my name as a domain, and that's really strongly I recommend that.
I agree. I think, you know, you need to get your name. It can be hard. My name is kind of common too, and what I had to do is put a hyphen. So mine is johnny-alexander.com because somebody owns but is not using johnnyalexander.com. I could buy it for like $800. I'm not doing that. So I've got the hyphen in there, and it's not the best solution, but it is a solution. So.
This is the other thing I would say, Johnny. There are, once you start, if I got onto Network Solutions, which is where I had all my domains registered, mm-hmm. and I started hunting for things, this is what I found when I worked even at the Evangelical Mission where I did their website. If I have searched for something, there are people, trolls out there who will see what you're searching for, and they'll buy it. Mm-hmm. And then they'll offer to sell it to you. So I would say, don't just hunt. Hunt and land your fish on the same day. You don't hunt fish and land your fish on the same day, okay? Because there are people who will take advantage of you. And most domains, if something is taken, you can do a little research. It's not hard to find out who owns that domain. What I have done is I've typed it in, the domain that I wanted. If it says it's not available, open a new browser window, type it in, see who's using it, you know, and be sure that it's, you know, if somebody searches you, they don't find something that you'd be really embarrassed or ashamed that they're on there, okay, and think it's you. Right. So there's some research that goes into it, but they will often offer you alternatives. Some people will like the .org, especially if you're a Christian. There are a lot of .org that is more, so you can buy different extensions. So if johnnyalexander.com, someone else has it, mm-hmm. you can put a hyphen in it and get the .com. Or you could get a different extension on the domain. Like for me, findthepony.com was gone. Well, because it was my blog, I registered findthepony.blog.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are different little tricks. And the other thing is, when I was doing Novelists Unwind and I wasn't sure what I wanted to call it, I thought, I'll call it the Writer's Patio. Well, that was taken. So I just started playing with different words to find, and did this through Bluehost, not out there, because I didn't want that to happen where I was looking for something and then someone would buy it and want to charge me a fortune. And finally, that's what I came up with, and no one had it. So in the hosting company itself, or like you can do this in GoDaddy, you can search for names that way and see what's available.
And again, you want to think long-term branding, right?
Yeah.
So you may think godswarriorninjascribe.com sounds awesome, but is that what you want to be in 5 years?
Exactly.
Right? Like, so I'm joshuajmasters.com. And then when I go to Twitter, it's at Joshua J. Masters. When you go to Facebook, it's at Joshua J. Masters. When you go to Instagram, right? You want a consistent brand that you're going to want 5 years, 10 years from now. Now, Rhonda was talking about subdomains like find the pony. Is that right? Find the pony?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are subdomains underneath your main branding. So grab those. Like she said, just the other day, I've got my next book is actually about my dog. So Franklin the pup. So he's on Twitter, he's on Facebook, but then when I went to go get him on Instagram, someone already had that same username. So I said, uh-oh, and I immediately went and bought the domain before someone else bought it, even though I probably don't need it for 2 years. But I wanted to make sure I had the domain available that I wanted. So we don't really have time to go into how to build things in WordPress because I want to make sure there's time for questions. Melissa and Rhonda and I have talked about, down the road doing a how to build it up with WordPress, and we use Divi, and Rhonda uses Elementor, and then other people just use themes, and we can walk you all through that another time down the road, but I don't want to rush it. I'd rather ask questions about what we did so far.
We thought that too in our planning coming up ahead, that we would ask you two back in a month or 2 months to do this kind of techie stuff again, because this is something we all need to know. Rhonda, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to say real quickly, if you want your website right now and you do not want to wait for Josh and me to be back on Writers Chat, I highly recommend a website called www.tyler.com. I got on Google. I found this guy who helped me, and he gives videos step by step, what you do, every single step. And it'll take you a few hours, but if you work through every single step, that's how I built my RhondaDragomir.com website when I had no idea what to do with WordPress.
Wow,
so I do recommend that. He also has beautiful templates that are free. All of that is free.
Oh, wow.
And I would even add on to that. I would even say in general, anything you want to do with your website, someone else has figured out how to do. And it's probably on Google or someone's blog or on YouTube. Like, there's a way to find what you want to do. So Google and YouTube are your friends in those circumstances.
Yeah.
So I'd say let's open it up.
Let's open it up. Come on back in, everybody. And one thing as you come back in, 2 things is, if you can't come back in, put it in the chat. We say this every week, but sometimes as people hopped on, we've taken you off the video. So if you need help coming, just put in if you can't come back in, and we'll release you. And
free you.
And we've got maybe about 5 minutes for some general questions, and then after we finish the recording, we could stay on. I know Rhonda and Josh will stay on for a little bit. We could ask some other questions. But I got to compliment you guys. Have been wonderful in the chat, helping each other. I've noticed Tina and Brandy and several of you have answered questions for us as we've gone along, which has been absolutely wonderful. You guys have been great today, helping each other, which is, to me, one of the value of this platform of Zoom, to help in that way. So come on in and ask your questions, and I'll watch the chat if you can't come on back in.
I get a question. Away. Actually, I have 2, but they're not related. One is, if I buy a trusted certificate through my domain company, will that be sufficient for the hosting company, since mine are disconnected? So I don't need to buy them through both places, just buy one, right? And does it matter which company I buy it through? Should I buy it through the hosting, or should I buy it through where I got my domain name?
It doesn't matter where you buy it, and you only need one. But if you don't buy it through your host, or you're not using the free version from your host, you'll have to install it on your hosting servers.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
it won't do you any good to have it where you bought your domain
So,
if it's not
okay,
on the servers. But
all
if
right,
it's
that makes a lot of
proprietary,
sense.
you just need to install it.
All right, my second question is, I have a blog that I'm no longer blogging on. It still exists, but I had a domain name, and I actually kind of took the domain name off, so it's not pointing to the blog anymore because I don't want to use it. But I've been hesitating taking off the domain name, just letting it lapse or selling it, because I'm concerned somebody might come along, take it, and then write something really awful since I had it for so long. So my question is, do I just keep paying over the years to maintain it just to preserve the content I already had and the reputation, or do I let it go? I'm not sure what to do with
that. Is it your actual name?
My name is actually in it. Yeah.
I mean, in the domain name, your name is in it?
Yeah. It was a blog called The Building Bros. And so,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So, I mean, it was about our family. It's got my name in it. So, I don't want it to end up being trashed.
Sure.
Yeah, and
I would
that
keep
one of the
it.
reasons I stopped that blog was because I did get some flack from others who did not agree with our lifestyle and started saying some pretty crummy things. So I didn't continue it, but I also don't want someone to come along and come against our family using my domain name that I let go.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So should I?
Keep it if I were you.
Maybe keep it. Okay.
They're pretty cheap. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's due to come up for renewal, in April, and I've been hesitant of what to do with it.
Brandy, be sure that you're paying as little money as possible
Yeah.
to register
Yeah.
the domain. You might want to switch it to someone who has it costs less to keep it.
That's a good idea. I'll look around. Yeah, thanks. Good point.
So for example, Rhonda's absolutely right. My active ones are on Fat Cow because that's where I'm using them. But I do have a couple that I'm not using, and I have those on Big Rock because it's half the price.
Is that bigrock.com?
I think so, yes.
All right, I'll take a look at that. Thanks.
I think it's $6.95 instead of $10.99 a year.
Yeah, that makes a big difference over the years.
Yes, it does.
It does, yeah.
It does. Hey guys, Norma's having some trouble popping in. She's having tech problems this morning, and she did ask in the chat about, does she need to decide on her brand before making her site?
Well, I guess I would say, how are you going to build a site if you don't know what your brand is? Now, that doesn't mean your brand can't grow and it can't develop, but you have to have a sense of the direction that you want to go in order to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If
Makes a
you're
difference.
building a building and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want a parking garage or an office building, it's going to be hard to start.
Yeah.
So have a general idea at least.
The other thing is the brand includes images and imagery. We haven't talked about it, but imagery is so important on a website. So if you go to my website, you're going to see ghosted in the back behind there. You're going to see a pony. Okay. So I had to kind of have some mental imagery going, and that is part of branding. So I do think you can register your domain, your name. It doesn't have to include that, but before you start doing the look and feel of your site, you need to have given some thought to branding.
Mm-hmm. And again, ask those two questions in prayer. If you're a Christian author, what is the purpose of my site? How do I best represent Christ? And how does he want you to do that? So branding isn't just your logo, right? It's who you are. So my desire as an author is to encourage and challenge. I want to give difficult truths as a challenge, but in an encouraging way. Now, nowhere on my site does it say those exact words, although it could, but everything I do, I'm thinking of that.
I like that phrase.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is making me think about my own website. I started my website and it's just my name. And my blog is on there. And my blog is multi-themed, or that's not the right.
That's a good word, yeah.
I write on family, faith, elder care, travel, lots of different themes. But I now have 2 books written. They're not published yet, but they're ready for a publishing partner. one is on Celebrate Grandparenting. It's about intentional grandparenting. And that's, of course, nonfiction. It's a resource book. The second one that I did not intend to ever write, but it was fun and I love it, and I'm probably going to do some sequels, is a children's book inspired by my granddaughter, who's very strong-willed. And anyway, I don't necessarily want to brand myself as just having to do with grandparenting, although that is my heart and soul right now. But I have so many other things I want to share. Now, I love what you said, Joshua, about inspiring and encouraging. That's who I am. Right now, I'm inspiring and encouraging intentional grandparenting. But a few years ago, if I'd been more active in writing, I would have been inspiring and encouraging caregivers for elderly.
Yeah.
So how do I have to have a brand? In other words, do I have to make my website be all about grandparenting right now because I'm trying to launch this book? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think what Tina just wrote in the chat is exactly right. You're the brand. And so
that's right. That's what
when
I
it
want
says that you're the brand, it means all the different facets of who you are, not just one part of you, all of who you are. So you can have a consistent look to your website, but still have different flavors of who you are.
Okay.
So let me give you a quick, I know we're short on time, but let me give you a quick example on my website. Although I wish I had a different example because I don't like using just mine. But you can see that there's a format where the header looks kind of like this. And as you go down, there's this parallaxing wall in the background. See that?
Right.
So that's how most of the site is. When you go to American Songs, which is my book, I wanted it to have a different flavor, but still feel consistent. So when that comes up, the header is styled the same, but it has a different picture. And when you come down and you see the parallaxing, it's got the American flag in the background. See?
Okay.
So it's the same style, but it's got a different flavor. When you go to the stage and screen from my old days in the film industry, same thing. It's got a different header. If it loads, come on. Actually, it's got the same header. But then when you scroll down for the parallaxing, it's got sort of this movie theme in the background. But it still feels like it's a continuous experience, but it shows different flavors of my personality. And that's what you can do with yours.
That's
Okay.
great.
That sounds good. Thank
Great
you.
example.
That is a wonderful example. We probably need to wrap up the recording, but we invite you guys all to stay. Josh and Rhonda, you made a technical thing that can be very dry and heady, really exciting, I think. So you get super. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And Rhonda's been great to work with. I had never met Rhonda or knew who she was until we did the first project together. And now I feel like I've got an online friend. And
Yeah.
That's great.
you're great to work with.
And again, that's a real benefit of Writers Chat. We're connecting, we're growing as writers, we're finding partners in crime in this work for the Lord. Let's put it that way, not in crime. Johnny,
I have
Sophia,
two thoughts to throw out real quick.
Go ahead.
One, back up your website, your content regularly.
Point.
Almost every time you change it. And to be aware that there are, I guess they call them trolls. There are bots that search for terms, and especially in this season, conservative themes, Christian themes are under attack, and they may seize on a word that makes your site a target. So make sure that whatever your host is, that it can adequately protect you against those, and be prepared, because we had to take one of my husband's sites down. He does commercial sites, but he also did some political sites like about 10 years ago. And my blog had been hosted there. I had backed it up, but I had to shut my whole site down. It was a lot of information on there. Thankfully, I have it now in .whatever form, CSV or whatever. but I have access to the raw material. But you just have to make sure that you protect yourself.
Good point.
That's another great point is I didn't have that on the list of things to ask about your host, but do they have spam blockers? So when you use WordPress, you can install a spam blocker. Like I use Ask Commit, and it says when I look at the dashboard that over the life of my site, it has blocked 2,227 malicious login attempts.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you do want, that's an excellent point, Sophia.
Very good. I'm glad you added that. Thank you. Thank you on that. As Johnny, any last minute thing, and we'll talk about next week too.
Yes, and I've got next week's stuff. One thing I wanted to say, I loved it when Josh said earlier about breaking things, and I think, and I know I deal with this. I'm so afraid of doing the wrong thing. I don't want to do anything. And sometimes you just have to get in there and do it. And you know what? I loved what he said. It can be fixed. It probably can be fixed. So don't just let fear keep you from trying. That's something I'm always telling myself. And yes, next week we are going to have our own Jeannie Wise and talking about, talking about sticky statements, which I'm not even sure I know what that means.
Come and find out. It's something I've been exploring with this year to grow as a writer. We're using sticky statements in my writing and in my speaking. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is. It's a presentation I'm doing for a different group, but I thought, why not share this with my friends on Writers Chat? So I volunteered to. So I'll be in the hot seat next week.
And so that'll be Jeannie. And then also I want to give you a heads up that we have decided on a date for Jab, Right Hook, Gary Vee book. And so that will be on September 25th. So that will be the definite date. If you haven't read it yet, please try to do so before then. Bethany will be back with us, and she's going to be, of course, leading that discussion. We're also going to have Josh and Rhonda back again. We're looking at doing, as part of Writers Chat, having a couple people's sites be evaluated by them, and so Rhonda's going to be contacting some people about that. And then we're also still, Rhonda had people who respond to her last week about those of us who want to be kind of in a group to evaluate each other's websites, and we may be doing that as a special Writers Chat edition sometime. So I think there are about 5 or 6 people involved in that. If you're interested, please send Rhonda an email at
Rhonda with an H at dragomirgroup.com.
Rhonda at Dragomir, DRAGOMIR.com. So I think that's everything. We look forward to having you all back next week. And thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay on for the after party. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay.